JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created, James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com code podcast. That's JamesAllen.com code podcast.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Iowa. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-BETS-OFF.
This is Kansas State's Daniel Green, and you're listening to the PowerCat Pregame Podcast on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Following a 48-31 road victory at West Virginia, Kansas State returns home to close out the 2022 regular season with the annual Sunflower Showdown against in-state rival Kansas. The Wildcats can clinch a berth in the Dr. Pepper Big 12 Championship with a win against the Jayhawks. The game will be televised nationally on Fox with a 7 p.m. kickoff at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Welcome to the PowerCat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Robbins Motor Company. I'm Go PowerCat publisher Tim Fitzgerald. The Wildcats have moved to the brink, to the very edge of earning a spot in the Big 12 Championship. That can happen two ways this weekend, actually. If Baylor can knock off Texas on Friday, the Cats advance, no matter what happens against KU. If Texas wins that game, the Cats must beat the Jayhawks at the Bill, and that will ramp up the pressure on both teams because, believe me, as much as K-State wants to earn that bid to the Big 12 championship game, Lance Leipold and his Kansas Jayhawks would love to play spoiler in this game. And for the first time in a long time, Kansas brings a team to Bill Snyder Family Stadium that is capable of exactly that. The Jayhawks are 6-5 on the season, 3-5 in the Big 12, but they started off so fast this season, getting up to 5-0 before the losses started to mount. A win over Oklahoma State got them their 6th win to make them bowl eligible. And if you're Kansas, you're thinking 7-5 sounds a lot better than 6-6, particularly when it means you have beaten your rival for the first time in many years. In fact, the Wildcats carry a 13-game winning streak into this edition of the Sunflower Showdown, and it is going to be a very interesting contest. Over the next hour, we will get deep into this matchup with the Jayhawks because Kansas State really needs this win, and Kansas is very capable of stealing their dreams. Up first will be Ryan Wallace. And of course, Wally is our football recruiting expert at GoPowerCat.com and helps out with team coverage. He's got some really interesting thoughts on this game and how these two teams pair up. Brian Hanley, the former Kansas State offensive lineman, awaits also on the other side of our break. And after a few interviews, Brian played for the Cats and those historic 97 and 98 teams as one of Michael Bishop's offensive linemen. Ryan Gilbert will join us at the end of the show to give us his thoughts on the gambling aspect of Big 12 football this weekend, the betting lines, the over-unders, anything he thinks is relevant that you need to know, just in case you want to put a little money on the game now that it's legal in the state of Kansas. And I should probably stop based on what happened last weekend. And one more bit of news for you, and I think you'll like this. It's Black Friday at GoPowerCat.com. If you enjoy our podcast, our videos, and all the free content that we do put out, we also put out a whole nother layer. Our VIP premium content is the best of the best. It's behind the paywall, and you have to be a subscriber to GPC to enjoy it. But the good news for you is 24/7 Sports, our network, and part of the CBS family. Well, we're having our Black Friday sale right now. So head on over to GoPowerCat.com and get 75% off your first year of an annual subscription. That is the best deal we offer all year long. It runs through the weekend, but take care of it before kickoff, because after the Cats win, you're going to be busy booking trips to Arlington and the Sugar Bowl. So get that all done right now. In fact, just hit the pause button. Just do it for me. Please subscribe to GoPowerCat.com. You help us add even more great layers to our coverage if enough K-Staters continue to subscribe. And we're growing like crazy, and a big reason is these podcasts are reaching so many people, as are our videos. And I did mention the Sugar Bowl. Did I just sneak that in there without context? In case you haven't seen my daily delivery video on the Sugar Bowl, here's the scenario. If Kansas State and TCU do advance to the Big 12 title game, K-State is a virtual lock. I don't want to say 100%, but it's 99.9% sure the Cats will go to the Sugar Bowl. And how's that? Well, the champion of the Big 12 automatically qualifies to play the best team available from the SEC. Typically, their champion is in the college football playoff. And this year, if that champion is TCU, if the Frogs do end up unbeaten and beat Kansas State, the Frogs play Iowa State on Saturday, they will advance to the college football playoff as an unbeaten team and a real contender to win a national title. But if Kansas State knocks off the Frogs, they would be Big 12 champions and go to the Sugar Bowl. But if Kansas State loses the Big 12 title game to TCU, the Sugar Bowl is contractually obligated to take the highest ranked Big 12 team available if the champion is in the playoff. And that would be, according to the college football playoff rankings, Kansas State. The opponent in the Sugar Bowl is still unknown, but it will be one of these historic brands out of the SEC. It could be LSU for the second straight year in a bowl game. Of course, Kansas State hammered a depleted bunch of Tigers last year in the Texas Bowl, and I bet the guys that return would love to get another crack at Kansas State. But don't write off Tennessee or even Alabama, which probably will also be depleted by NFL draft departures prior to the game. But still, those are pretty weighty names from the history of college football for the Kansas State Wildcats to get to line up against. That is down the road, though. Step one is winning this game with the Kansas Jayhawks. Can the Wildcats do it? And it's probably time to bring in our Ryan Wallace to discuss all of that. But first, this little bit of information. At Robbins Motor Company, they strive to earn lifetime business and build relationships, selling quality cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs, and offering top-notch parts and service. Robbins Motor Company, title sponsor of the PowerCat Pregame podcast. And now we bring in our own Ryan Wallace to talk about the Wildcats and Jayhawks at Bill Snyder Family Stadium on Saturday night. What a way to end the regular season for both programs. Let's start there. Wally, do you like having this rivalry game as the last game of the year, or does it add too many distractions, other ingredients to this game that might have unintended consequences, as in KU's now motivated to steal something from K-State?
Yeah, I mean, sure, there's maybe greater risk playing it at the end of the year. But to me, that's what rivalry games are about. And I really embraced the fact that Chris Kleiman came out this week and said, yeah, we should play this game at the end of the year. It's something to look forward to. And it's something, again, that no matter what the record is of a KU or K-State, you always kind of have that one game that you know is at the end that you can really just put all your marbles in for. And, we've seen it work out in the past when, Bedlam has been, at the end of the regular season. And I just think it does add something It does. It's good, I think, for both programs. And I think it's good for college football, too. I think, when you get to early in the year, everybody's just excited to play football. Then middle of the year, everybody's just excited to play conference football. And then by the end of the year, you kind of get to a point where, either your team's in it or they're not. And so it seems like the attention span for teams that are kind of out of it go down. But again, if you're packing a lot of rivalry games there at the end, it's giving, an Iowa State or in past cases, not this year, a KU fan base, it promotes more attention for them to stick around for that last game this season. I'm all for it.
Okay, that's an interesting take. And of course, we know that Kansas started the season with 5 straight wins and have only won one of their last 6, but that was over Oklahoma State, got them bowl eligible. So they're coming off back-to-back losses now to Texas Tech, and then Texas just ran them off the field last week in Lawrence. And what was interesting about that, Jalen Daniels came back from his shoulder injury. We expected him maybe to pick up where he left off. He was not just a spark for the offense, but seemed to be motivation for the entire team. They seemed to connect everything together that Kansas was attempting to do, and that didn't happen against Texas. He looked very cautious in that game, a guy that didn't want to get injured again. Maybe Texas did some things that confused him after not being in live action for a while. But he is a very dangerous quarterback. We did see at the start of the year what he can do for this team. And honestly, out of all the players in this game, Will Howard, Deuce Vaughn, Felix Anudike-Uzama, all those players for K-State, Jalen Daniels for me is the X factor in this game.
Yeah, I mean, first off, getting to Daniels and his performance last week, again, I'm not privy to just how healthy he's been, but it seems like for a couple weeks now there have been some thought that maybe he could give it a go. If he was, again, pure speculation, if he was capable of playing 2 weeks ago in Lubbock, to me, that's when you put him in. I think it was a better matchup for him, a better matchup for, that offense going against the Texas Tech defense to, again, try and get some momentum and then come back home against Texas and really fine-tune some things with Daniels kind of being maybe a little rusty or whatever, instead of throwing him to the dogs against a Texas team that was, super hungry to get some revenge after losing to KU the year before. And again, as K-State saw, a very active, big, aggressive defense and offense. So, I mean, I don't know. They kind of put him in a tough situation to perform well. But I agree with you overall in the assessment of Daniels. He has been the difference for this offense. I think Jason Bean's a very capable guy, too, the backup quarterback. But we even saw fits the last time KU was in Manhattan 2 years ago in, a game that K-State ran away with it. Jalen Daniels still had some plays in that game where you were going, okay, this kid might have a little moxie to him. And now we've seen it come full circle. The difference really in KU season was when he went down. And I agree with you. He does as much for the offense as he does the defense, not just in the sense of, well, yeah, the offense is going to score more points. It takes pressure off the defense. But, like we saw with TCU and Max Duggan, this team just rallies around him. And when he's not on the field, it not only messes up their game plan, but I think it really messes up their just overall IQ and their confidence.
We didn't see it so much last week with the Wildcats at West Virginia, but I kind of feel like Will Howard has done the same thing. He makes the defense better because the offense seems to have a better rhythm to it. Maybe they possess the ball, or these quarterbacks give the defense the comfort in knowing that they can take some chances because their guy can score when they need to score. And Jalen Daniels has done that. That's really what he does better than Jason Bean, because you look at the stats and they're shockingly similar. Maybe Daniels shows up as the more effective runner. And if he's going to be cautious with that shoulder and not run the ball, which he didn't do much of last week, that kind of takes that off the table. He can run that option, the true option that they line up and run better than Jason Bean. Bean's probably faster, but their completion percentages are really similar. I mean, they're passing stats are just almost identical, except Bean might be throwing more interceptions per attempt. So I feel like if Jalen Daniels comes out, can run the ball effectively, can settle in, and maybe make a big play or two, my fear is Kansas is going to revert to the first 5 games of the season and that confidence they had, because they have so much confidence in this quarterback. It just feeds off of everything. It's honestly, it's fun to watch.
Well, and I think the other thing that we need to be giving KU some credit for this season is we're finally seeing something that we all kind of assumed and maybe the K-State fan base feared, which is Lance Leipold has put a pretty damn good staff together. Yep. This is a good group of coaches. Not only are they developing the players better, coaching them better, and they've now had, a full season to do it. Last year, they came in late. I think they were still trying to figure out what players do certain things well and what can we run in the Big 12 and what can't we. I mean, last year was a lot of trial and error, and this year this coaching staff's really good, particularly the offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki. His creativity in maximizing, where I can get my hats against less hats on the defense is really fun to watch. And they'll do some, I want to say, exotic stuff out of a very non-exotic offense. Just the way that he can align stuff is really good. And again, I think, it demands the way that they don't have a lot of skilled players. It sounds a lot like K-State's, of offenses of the past. You kind of got to maximize in your scheming, and it demands a lot from the quarterback because there's a lot of creativity that goes into it, and so you need a quarterback that is comfortable outside the pocket. You're right, Jason Bean is actually faster. North to south, Jason Bean can go, but he wants to be more of a pocket passer. He wants to he's not as comfortable, and agile and mobile out of the pocket as a Jalen Daniels. And so Daniels allows this coaching staff an ability to do some different packages and things that can catch a defense off guard. And again, because of that, the ability where a defense has to stay honest when Jalen Daniels on the field. And so when he hasn't been on the field, I think it limits the creativity that Kotelnicki can draw up and design, and it makes defenses, again, they can just kind of load the box or they can drop everybody back, and that's not what KU's built on. KU has been built on so far this season running it effectively and then catching you off guard with big throws. Fitz, if you look at statistics here, only TCU has scored more touchdowns than the Kansas Jayhawks on offense this season. And they're the number 1 team in the Big 12 in average per play, they lead in rushing average per rush and per reception. It's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of like the military teams, like an Army. They don't pass it a lot, but they're damn good when they do. They're going to catch you for big plays when they do. Again, it's all about scheme, and I think it's all about having the right quarterback under center, and that's why we've seen such a drastic difference when Jalen Daniels has been on the field versus when he hasn't.
When they get into a shootout, which they did quite a bit earlier in the season, I mean, they beat West Virginia 55-42, Houston 48-30, Duke 35-27. Iowa State sucked them into the low-scoring thing that they do to everyone. They even lost to TCU 38-31. That was a really good game. Lost to Oklahoma 52-42. I mean, they just put up silly numbers sometimes on offense. What they do extremely well, aside from rushing the ball with Devin Neal and their quarterbacks, is they spread around the ball to a bunch of guys that can catch the ball. This is an amazing stat. Kansas has 184 receptions as a team this season. 16 different guys have caught passes. Their leading receiver is Luke Grimm. He has only caught 39 passes. He's caught fewer than 20% of the team's passes. That's how much they toss it around to different guys. Mason Fairchild, Jared Casey are a great tight end combo. Devin Neal is 5th in receptions. They start spraying the ball around the field. And here's the other thing that I've noticed about KU that is significant. These dudes go get the ball. these are really aggressive, good pass catchers. And I'm not just saying receivers, all of them. They go compete for the ball, and they make some really hard catches, make their quarterbacks look good. That scares me. With Kansas State's safety issues, and we can get into that now, that scares me that the back end of the defense, if the front end can't get enough pressure, is going to be really challenged.
Well, and just quickly touching on some of the receivers, as I mentioned, you look at their averages per catch, and that's a little frightening because, again, this staff has an ability with KU to maximize on what they have. Luke Grimm, 10.5 yards a catch, and then Quentin Skinner and Lawrence Arnold are both over 17 yards per catch. They're really good route runners too, Fitz. I love that you talked about how aggressive they are at going and getting the ball, but they're really good route runners. I think Pro Football Focus grades this offense as purely from receiving in terms of how they run routes and how they catch the ball, number 2 among all Power 5 teams. They only have 4 drops on the season. Again, they maximize it. They're very effective. And getting into the safeties and the injuries that K-State's going to face this week, I think the challenge for these safeties this week to me, and I say these safeties, specifically a TJ Smith and a true freshman like VJ Payne, is with Jalen Daniels, you have to make the right read or he will make you pay. Again, there's going to be a lot of different formations and alignments and pre-snap stuff. They're going to run the option. They're going to have play action. They're going to have Jalen Daniels do wild 360 spins where you think he's going this way, and then he's got a guy over the top, the complete opposite direction. They'll do that. This coaching staff's really good at it. So you've got to be, cross your T's, dot your I's. There's got to be really good communication back there. In Morgantown, I felt like Josh Hayes, you could see the frustration on him. And I think part of it was just he's been so used to having a Kobe Savage or a Drake Cheatham or a Sincere Mason beside him where they're experienced players, but they've also gone through practice getting the bulk of the snaps together as a group, where he knew where those guys were going to be. He assumed what those guys were going to do. TJ Smith and VJ Payne didn't always maybe get that. They didn't get all the things that he was assuming they would get. So there's got to be really good communication. And to me, Fitz, I think this is a big game for TJ Smith. I would assume that he'll start. He's got the bulk of the experience. I want to say he's played in close to 30 games now at K-State, but he's had a really rough year. And if I'm Joe Klanderman, this is a really good opportunity to see how he does with more snaps this season in a game where he's starting. And if not, roll the dice with VJ Payne because, although he's a little green, he's going to make some mistakes. I think the athleticism and the size that he brings to that position, the ability to cover and come up and run support, maybe it's time to see what he can do and give him a little bit more of the share because it's just been a rough go with TJ Smith. It's a really tough game for him. Again, from a game plan standpoint, K-State needs him to be big. They need him. Drake Cheatham and Josh Hayes have been good. Now you got to have somebody. Last week we talked about it, Fitz. I felt okay, with Sincere Mason coming in the way that he played. Now you lose Kobe Savage, and now you lose Sincere Mason. I'm feeling a little different.
Yeah, it's a problem. I'll be curious to see if Coach Kleiman and Joe Klanderman, his defensive coordinator who coaches the safeties, does an experiment maybe with a corner sliding to the nickel spot, do something to, shore up their depth where, you don't have 3 positions, maybe 2. I look at a dude like Julius Branson. You can't move him from corner because he's maybe the best corner in the conference, but he's gotten so much more physical. I feel like he could slide inside to the nickel and, be in run defense a little bit more than he's used to, but I don't see them doing that. They might go with one of the younger corners with that duty. But while we're speaking of defense, let's flip it over to KU's because this has been a disaster. We can talk about the Jalen Daniels injury being a reason why they collapsed, but really the defense is just a shell of itself. And at the start of the year, it wasn't very good. It did kind of lock down a little bit in the middle, but now they've lost their way. And I just think it is people got enough film on them. They saw enough issues on that defense and they're exploiting it. But really run defense has been pitiful. They gave up more than 400 yards of rushing yards to Texas last week. And look, look, we know that they're pretty good in the backfield with Bijan Robinson, and other guys got after him. But the numbers they are giving up on the ground right now are shocking, but not as shocking as the fact they're not the worst run defense in the conference. That belongs to Oklahoma. Good job with hiring a defensive coach. But right now, over the season, Kansas has given up 190 on the ground. I'm betting if K-State gets rolling, it's going to be well over 250. This is very intriguing to me because you got Will Howard who can throw it around, but really your best game plan here is to limit that and just turn around and hand it off to Deuce Vaughn and let him go.
Yeah, I think that early on in the season, what we saw from opponents facing KU was, I think, maybe being a little bit timid at the line of scrimmage and attacking a largely inexperienced secondary. They've got some really good pieces in the secondary. They're just young. Romello Dotson, O.J. Burrows is really good, Kobe Bryant. There's some guys in that back half that, again, I think are really capable guys and guys that create turnovers. They're not always assignment sound. You're looking at a defense that has 127 missed tackles on the season. Some of that is the offenses that they've faced, create that with playmakers. Obviously, a team like Texas, some of it is just bad, just not being assignment sound and having young guys. They've also given up more yards after the catch than even a West Virginia defense that we saw K-State take the top off of last week. Over 1,500 yards after the catch allowed by this KU defense. But getting back to the secondary for KU, the Jayhawks, while they are inexperienced at corner and at safety, those are some of their better athletes, I think, on defense. And they showed early in the year that they can create some turnovers. They're going to give up some plays, but that's where a lot of the turnovers were generated. And as we got into Big 12 play and you saw more of these teams kind of go with the up-tempo offenses, you saw that defensive line start to really wear down. And you've got a group of linebackers, too, that I don't think they've compounded things where the D-line has made errors and the linebackers need to clean it up. They haven't. And so it's the front seven, like you said, Fitz, that's just been gashed. In the 5 losses this year, they're averaging yard per rush allowed is 5.2, whereas in their 5 wins, I'm not counting Tennessee Tech, they're 3.28 yards per rush. And again, it's. I think folks have just decided, you know what, we're going to ground and pound this thing on KU. And for me, I've talked to some KU insiders, and I've asked them this week: is it more is it linebackers, is it interior D-line, or is it DN? Both have said it's the trenches has been the problem because they've got some guys that can effectively get to the pass rusher. They went out and attacked the portal. Lonnie Phelps from Miami of Ohio that starts at DN for them has proven himself to be a legitimate pass rushing threat in this conference. 9.5 tackles for loss, 6 sacks on the season. And Craig Young, the Ohio State transfer that they play kind of at an outside linebacker hybrid, he's got 4.5 tackles for loss and 3.5 sacks. They've got some guys that can get to the pass rusher. But Fitz, to me, they do not hold the edge in run support very well at all. And I think the interior of their D-line, specifically, you look at, Caleb Sampson, I think is a capable guy at D tackle. But, Sam Burt just isn't a guy right now. Good hustle, veteran guy. I think he's an Abilene guy, so a local player, good story. Not a guy that you can really depend on to stop the rush. Caleb Taylor, same way. And so I think this is a game that K-State can come out with Colin Klein, a physical runner when he wants to be, and Will Howard, and obviously Deuce Vaughn. And I would imagine K-State's going to say, we're going to run it down your throat until you prove that you can stop us. And I think the interesting kind of subplot to all of that, Fitz, is that if I am correct in the interior of this defense being a problem, the motivational factor for K-State's offense in the inside, look no further than their hometown. Cooper Beebe, Piper, Kansas. Hayden Gillum, Kansas. And Hadley Panzer, another Kansas kid. So there'll be a lot of motivation on the interior of this offensive line of Connor Riley's to just really run it up.
Yep. This could get very interesting for K-State. I'm I'm interested in the game plans. I can't wait for the game to start so I can see what K-State wants to do on both sides of the ball. I think K-State is the far better team right now. I'm just getting back to our first topic. I'm glad this game is last because I wouldn't want to caught Kansas with Jalen Daniels healthy and confident like Iowa State did. But I do think this is a game K-State wins. What are your thoughts overall on this outcome of this contest?
Yeah, I like K-State. I think it'll be competitive, maybe more so than we've seen in years past, although there have been a couple in the last several years where KU's kind of kept it close before K-State's pushed on. I think it'll be competitive. I still see K-State winning by, 14 plus when it's all said and done, just because I think overall they're the more balanced team. Overall, they're a team that is driven to play in Arlington next week, and they know that everything rides on this. I think special teams, KU, we didn't even touch on that. I think they're a disaster in special teams compared to K-State. And again, I just go back to, KU's better coached than they have been in years past. But, when it comes to senior day, when it comes to, this game being played and with so much on the line, and I look at the rosters and I see KU having 24 players from the state of Kansas, and K-State's going to run out 55 from the Sunflower State on Saturday, and a bulk of those guys are going to play meaningful minutes. I'm hard pressed to see K-State letting this one slip away. And the thing that I'll leave you with, one last part here, Fitz, that I like K-State, is that I think KU is not a team that's built to come from behind. They're not. They want to get up on you early, seize momentum, and hold it. And I went back and found this interesting stat. When the Jayhawks have scored first this season, or they've led at halftime, they're undefeated in 2022. But under Lance Leipold, they're 2-12 when they've allowed opponents to score first. They're 1-12 when trailing at halftime, and they are 0-13 when they are trailing after three quarters. If K-State can come up, get on this team early from the jump, let the crowd get into it, I just don't think KU is built, although better than they have been in years past. They're not built to come from behind and take out a K-State team that, again, has their sights set on a championship date next week.
That's why we have you on this show. That was quality stuff, Wally. You're good on the holidays, man. You're like, the thought of turkey apparently brings out the best in you. I don't know, man.
Yeah, talk to me before I get the turkey into me, because afterwards it'd be a little sloppy.
That's Ryan Wallace, our football recruiting expert. Make sure you follow along and Go PowerCat. Most of his stuff is behind the paywall, and of course, as I said at the top of the show, we have a 75% offer going right now. So please think about yourself this holiday season and buy yourself a little GoPowerCat.com. Wally, thank you very much. I suspect we'll have to do this again next week, and if so, that will be kind of fun.
Sure hope so.
That's it for Ryan Wallace. And as we head into the break, let's hear from Coach Chris Kleiman. I mentioned the safeties at the top of the show, and now let's hear from Chris Kleiman. I asked him on Tuesday about Sincere Mason, but here is some of his opening comments and my opening questions to Coach Kleiman. And after the break, we will have our player interviews and something a little extra this week to get you ready for the Sunflower Showdown. And now take it away, Coach Kleiman. And at the end, he discusses the loss of not just Kobe Savage 2 games ago, but fellow safety Sincere Mason last week at West Virginia. K-State will play this game and the rest of this season without 2 of their top 4 safeties. Here's Chris Kleiman.
Please, anytime you can go on the road and get a win, especially in Morgantown, it's a really tough place to play. It's a tough environment, and our guys were able to handle business. And now we're back this week. Got a really good KU team coming in here. I've got a lot of respect for Coach Leipold. Does a great job, and they're playing really well. I know they've been beaten the last couple of weeks, but they're a good football team, and it's the last game of the season. And I think that's probably a good thing. I don't know where that's going or how that's determined, but the fact that I think rivalry games should be played later in a season, whether it's week 11, week 12, I think is great for both teams. No matter what the record is, I think there's a lot at stake when you have your rivalry game at the end. So that's what makes this one really unique. And without question, when you watch them on film, you see a team that plays faster, plays more confident, is making plays on both sides of the ball, and is a good team.
What is this edition of Kansas football doing that's being more successful than the previous ones?
I think the biggest thing is believing. You know, I don't know their roster, but they're playing hard and they're believing, and they do have talented players without question, but they're playing inspired. Them getting to a bowl game, I know is huge for the program, and I know that this is kind of the potential cherry on top for them with this game because they're already bowl eligible, so they really don't have anything to lose. And I know that they're playing hard for each other, and they're playing hard for their coaching staff, and it's going to be a big challenge.
Jalen Daniels struggled on Saturday against Texas, but we saw earlier in the year how dynamic he can be and how he seems to improve the entire team. What kind of problems does he present?
Well, he causes a lot of problems because he can throw it exceptionally well. He can run it. He extends plays, does a little bit of everything. And you're right, he makes everybody around him better. I'd say the same thing about Bean. I really would. I think he extends plays and he runs around. And both quarterbacks have had really good success throughout this season. And assume we're going to see both, or both will be available. And I don't know how much the offense changes, but something we're diving into right now to see if it does. But they're both really dynamic players that throw it well, run it well, and they're an explosive offense, and you can see that. And we have to have our eyes right because of a lot of misdirection and a lot of motions and kind of eye candy that they try to pull your eyes away.
Finally, Sincere Mason seemed to provide a bad update yesterday on social media. What's his status and what's his due to the safety position?
Well, do you want to play, Fitz? No. Okay. Well, no, we don't want that. So, Sincere's out for the year as well. Tough blow. And feel awful for him, and so it makes us pretty thin back there for sure. And you lose Kobe, and then you lose Sincere, but it's late November football, and that happens. And we've got to get the next guy ready to go. There's a lot of guys that are going to work in that position, and we'll kind of work through that this week and see what the best option is for us.
This is Kansas State's Felix Enrique Uzama. We'll be right back with more of the PowerCat Pregame Podcast.
Listen up. I won't sugarcoat it. This is the longest cold, flu, and allergy season we've ever seen, but we're not alone. We've got Instacart. Sure, you may be a coughing snot faucet who just wants mommy, but you're not giving up. Not when cold medicine, fragrant herbal teas, and honey shaped like bears can be delivered through Instacart in as fast as 30 minutes. Now let's go win the sick playoffs!
Daddy, I just want my soup.
Oh, sorry, Sport. App says it'll be here in a few minutes. Instacart for the win.
If you're in the market for investment-worthy bags, watches, and fine jewelry, Rebag is the answer. Rebag is a luxury resale marketplace where each piece is carefully vetted and verified by experts to ensure quality and authenticity. If you're in the market, use Rebag to buy and sell finds from the world's top brands, including Hermes, Chanel, and Cartier. Head to Rebag.com to get 10% off your first purchase with code REBAG10. Shop today at Rebag.com. That's REBAG.com. And use promo code REBAG10 for 10% off your first purchase.
This is Kansas State's Cooper Beebe, and welcome back to the PowerCat Pregame Podcast on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the PowerCat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Robbins Motor Company. I'm Go PowerCat publisher Tim Fitzgerald, and this is your preview of Kansas State and Kansas, the 12th-ranked Wildcats, according to the football playoff rankings, are playing host to the Jayhawks Saturday night, Bill Snyder Family Stadium here in Manhattan, Kansas. 7 p.m. kickoff on Fox. It's going to be a big game on a big platform for both of these programs. And we're sponsored by Robbins Motor Company, the dedicated team of automotive professionals at Robbins, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat will match you with a vehicle that suits your lifestyle and budget. Robbins Motor Company, title sponsor of the PowerCat Pregame podcast. Let's get into our interview segments, and I did mean plural there. This will be the first interview we have for the day. It's a short one, but it's with two guys that have stood up and made their presence known over the last few weeks. We're going to start off with tight end Ben Sinnott, who has erupted into Will Howard's weapon of choice. He has been fantastic for the Wildcats. A little Travis Kelce thing going on there with him and his quarterback. It's pretty fun to watch. And then right on the heels of that, we'll have some questions and answers for Brendan Mott. These are two kids from Iowa who came to K-State without much recognition and now are star players. Mott, starting at defensive end for the Wildcats this season, he had 3 sacks last week at West Virginia in a performance that turned a lot of heads and earned him Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week. Here we go with the player interviews. Ben Sinnott and Brendan Mott.
I just think I've gotten more opportunities. I think me and Will just have such a good chemistry together, and he just takes what the defense has given him, and I guess the defense has opened me up a little bit, so I think that's what it is.
What do you cause defenses to do to kind of compensate for what you're doing now? How are they adjusting to try to take you away?
I haven't really noticed much. I mean, we just have so many weapons. It's hard to take just me away because it opens up everything else. So I think I'm honestly probably the least of our worries with how talented our offense is.
How important is your confidence right now? You're attacking the ball. I mean, anything that hits you in the hands, basically, you're catching.
It's really important, especially when that opportunity comes, just to go up, have the confidence to go up and get it, and just being confident in everyone around me to help me out, and especially Will.
Does Ben Sinnott surprise Ben Sinnott sometimes?
I would say, yeah, a little bit, definitely. But, I mean, it's awesome. I just try to make those plays every day, so it works out in the game.
What are the emotions going through your head this week?
I'm feeling good. I'm just going at it just like every other week, just attack it. Just another game for us. Obviously, it means a lot more, especially with the KU rivalry and the things with it. But, yeah, just attacking it like every other week. Just try to keep the same mindset.
On your touchdown on Saturday, it looked like you started to run a post route, and then when you saw Will start to do the quarterback scramble, he just had him and a linebacker to beat. Were you surprised that he threw you the ball?
Maybe a little bit. I did see it. He had a lot of running room, but like I said, we just have that trust in each other. So I'm glad he threw it to me.
Have you seen any difference in the way teams block you with having a little more on film now?
I mean, not too much. It always helps having a guy on the other side like Felix, knowing that they have to help maybe chip him or bring the guard over to his side. So I'd say that's helped with my success, having a ball player like Felix over there.
What do you attribute to your success in the West Virginia game?
Just nothing really changed practice-wise. Just doing the same thing, film. Extra work on the sled and everything like that. Just I guess the opportunity was there, and I made some plays.
If you were defensive coordinator, would you double team Brendan Mott and leave Felix man to man?
I don't think it's smart for anyone to leave Felix one-on-one, so no, I wouldn't.
On one of your sacks, it looked like you were kind of double teamed, and they left Felix single block. You got chipped, and then Felix brushed him upfield, and you got the sack. Was there any banter between you two on that one?
There was a little banter on that one, and then the other one where Eli almost had a sack, and then he got hit from behind by Duke, I think it was. So there's always a little fun little talk on the benches about who should have gotten what. But so yeah.
Okay, Jalen Daniels is an incredibly mobile quarterback. What kind of problems does he present for the defensive front?
Yeah, he's a great quarterback, and they have a very unique offense. A lot of shifts, a lot of stuff that we need to be ready for. So we really need to key in on the details this week. Watch that extra film with not having classes, and be ready for them on Saturday.
And now we bring in Brian Hanley. Oh, man. Brian, I appreciate you joining us. We just talked the other day about the win over West Virginia. Let's turn our attention to the Kansas Jayhawks. And, boy, this Kansas team is much improved. My hat's off to Lance Leipold, who just signed an extension, which is pretty cool. It looks like he's going to pass up not just on the Nebraska job, which I suspected he wouldn't take, but the Wisconsin job, which I did suspect he would take, and he's going to stay at Kansas. Let's start there. That's really good for this football rivalry because this dude has a little bit of Bill Snyder in him. I don't want to compare him too much to Coach, but he seems to get his team ready for games. They're schematically and fundamentally much better. But the thing he's done that I've noticed, and Coach Kleiman mentioned it in his opening comments at Tuesday's press conference, they just believe they're better. And that's a hard corner to turn when rebuilding a program. But by golly, Lance Leipold has them believing they can win every game, including this one, as they come in at 6-5.
Man, you said it before I could say it, Fitz. It's just a little confidence. You win a game or two, and then the next thing you know, you're going downhill. I mean, you've gone the other side of this confidence barrier, and that's all it takes when you're dealing with college. I shouldn't say it's all it takes, but that's a lot of it. Is just having the confidence and knowing, okay, you know what? We won a game. We can win another game. We can win another game. And they've got it going downhill. Now, they also have some decent players. That helps. And when you're dealing with a transfer portal and you're building teams, you know, kind of how you have to build them year to year now, things can be different. And he's a good football coach, too. So, you know, that helps. When you got a good football coach and you're putting guys in positions to make plays, a lot of things can change for your football team. And it's changed for Kansas. So good for them. I get it.
It really is. It's kind of fun to watch how he's doing it. But Jalen Daniels has been a big part of this. The defense still has some questions. We'll get into that. They've got some other weapons on offense. They still don't quite have the offensive line they need to operate at a high level. But when Jalen Daniels was healthy this season, when he was on the field for KU, they were 5-0. Then, lo and behold, like everyone else, he gets injured against TCU. They still play TCU close, but that started off the kind of tumble from, you know, greatness as they slid to 5 out of the last 6 with losses, beating Oklahoma State. They got Jalen Daniels back last week against Texas. He was kind of a shell of the player we saw earlier this year. Brian, I just kind of suspect he is going to be 100% locked in on this game because of the opportunity that awaits his Jayhawks.
Yeah, I think him and the entire football team are going to be ready to play against Kansas State. I just believe so. I think that they believe that they can knock us off, keep us out of the Big 12 title game, get the rivalry going back again. And to be honest with you, Fitz, I want them to believe those things. I want this to be a good rivalry again. Now, do I want to kick their head in? Absolutely. But let's have it be a rivalry again where the games can be competitive and not, you know, half the people that are watching on TV turn it off at halftime because it's 45-0, you know. So I think they'll be ready. I think they do. I think they've got some talented players. Jalen Daniels is really good, man. He is. Last week didn't really show up so much. This week, I believe it will. I think last week was kind of a get back, am I going to get hurt type of a game. And I think this week he's like, you know what? I didn't get hurt, so I can go out there and he's going to let it all hang out. So we just got to be ready.
Yep, absolutely. And speaking of making this game more tangible, more realistic, more competitive, it paid off already for this series. This series often relegated to streaming platforms or the least of the network channels, an ESPN 7 or FS3. Those don't exist, but you know what I mean. All of a sudden, because KU has turned the corner and played so much better this season, they've upped the ante here. And here we go. It's a night game at Bill Snyder Family Stadium on Fox, not Fox Sports Channel.
Fox, the big guys, and it's meaningful, and that's pretty damn cool for this series because K-State has a lot at stake in this game, trying to go to the Big 12 title game, while KU is trying to improve their bowl chances. Big stage. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Big stage. Guys will be fired up on both sides. And I think it's important for the state of Kansas, just to have this game spotlight the state like this on national television. I really do. A lot of people look at it differently. I just think it's a big game for the entire state. It's a big game for the Big 12, because, again, it's another spotlight game that we can produce that maybe at the beginning of the season – people thought, oh, yeah, we can't really do much with this game at the end of the year, even though it's a rivalry. Well, now you can. So it helps everything. It helps Kansas, K-State, helps the state of Kansas, helps the Big 12. It's just a really good feeling for everything involved when especially a big rivalry game like this is meaningful.
Coming out of the break before we brought you in, we had a couple player interviews, and I want to ask you about these two dudes and what they've meant for the team, and we're going to start on the offensive side of the ball. We talked about it a little bit on the post-game podcast we recorded, but tight end Ben Sinnott is fun. And he has really impacted what K-State can do on offense. He opens up so much more. And an interesting part of my interview, he admitted that he hasn't seen any adjustment from defenses and how they're trying to cover him. At some point, they better figure out that he's kind of Will Howard's favorite target and try to take him away. But you and I love throwing to the tight end. Well, not us. Nobody wants us throwing the ball. You and I love when teams throw to the tight end. K-State's back to doing it. And it is proving very effective, isn't it?
And it's odd that teams haven't taken that away, but it's odd in a sense, but then it isn't, because what do you want to do? Do you want to take away the tight end, or do you want to take away Deuce Vaughn? Or do you want to take away, the receivers on the outside, which we've been throwing the ball down the field? You can't take away everything. So if he's going to be the part of the offense, I think that's the spot where teams are going to say, okay, well, we'll make you beat us by throwing to the tight end. Well, we're doing it. And we got to continue to do it, because you can't take away everything. You just can't. You're not able to do that in football. You got to pick your spots and what you're going to battle. And I think teams have just decided that we're going to let him beat us. And he's way too athletic for them to allow that. And good for us, because they're just going to continue to let him hurt them down the middle of the field. And we're just going to continue to do it.
Yeah, it is really fun to watch him and the connection he has with Will Howard, who continues to advance as now K-State's quarterback. The other guy I want to talk about is a guy that's cast in the chips that opposing offenses have to put on the table, and that is if you want to double-team Felix Anudike-Uzomah, someone's going to be single-teamed, and that has been Brendan Mott. The guy that kind of was in the shadows of other players coming into the season took advantage of his opportunity to start early in the year. He's now taken over that starting role because he's been so good. And last week he had 3 sacks at West Virginia. Hell, we had a party. We took a whole week off at Kansas State to celebrate Felix's 4-sack game. And Brendan Mott goes out there and gets 3 and it's like, it's not good enough. But Brendan Mott has really made a huge difference, and he makes people pay. You want to focus on King Felix, which you probably should. Well, here's your price to pay. He's been a revelation for this defense, hasn't he?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what you need. You knew that Felix was going to get all this attention, and he still is dominating football games. At the same time, you got to have somebody on the other side that's going to make you pay, and Brendan has absolutely made teams pay. And it's good because he hasn't even blossomed into his full body yet. I mean, he's not there. He doesn't have all his man strength yet. He doesn't even have his man body yet. He's still putting it together, his body per se, but he's put it together on the football field. The guy is playing really hard. He's technically sound, but he's an athlete out there. He's just going out there and making plays. It's good to see, man. Couldn't be more happy for him.
So if you're Joe Klanderman, the defensive coordinator for Kansas State, they have Jalen Daniels back. He wasn't that good against Texas, but you know what he can do. He can run around. He can run that option. He can hand it off to Devin Neal. He can sit in the pocket and throw it to some really good receivers who just don't drop the ball. They're so consistent. He loves to throw to his tight ends, another golden star from us. But would you line up and kind of sit back and hope KU makes mistakes and take advantage of it? Or is this a game with Mott and Anyudike Uzama and Huggins and Daniel Green and Khalid Duke where you say, screw it, we're attacking them with the full force of our pass rush defense and get after Jalen Daniels and maybe give up a big play in the process? Sit back, be conservative, or get a little loosey-goosey and go after that quarterback?
The problem with sitting back is it's just what you said. KU will take what you give them, and the receivers aren't going to drop the football. So if they're going to take what you give them, they're going to take it, and they're going to consistently move down the field. That keeps our offense off the field. I don't like that approach. Got to be attacked, got to be aggressive, and attack them. Make them make the mistakes, because if you don't, they're not going to make them. So you have to make them make the mistakes. Our defensive line is better than Kansas's offensive line. They are. So we have to get after them. Our front seven is going to be whatever better than what they can protect it. Attack the quarterback. He's just coming back. Like you said, he didn't play well last week. I believe he'll have a better game against us. I just believe that. Having said that, that doesn't mean that we can't get after them and make some things happen on our end. It's always better as a defense when you're the aggressor.
You brought up a really good point, and it's honestly something we don't talk about much. We always talk about what the K-State offense does if they can help the defense get rested and control the ball and control the clock and how that makes the defense better. But when the defense is not getting off the field, when they are giving up prolonged drives, we don't talk about it chilling out the own offense of Kansas State. Right. And honestly, that maybe was my biggest complaint about past K-State defenses that were so passive, the bend that don't break. Your offense was just never in rhythm because of how you play defense. So I think that's a really good point, that when this team plays at its highest level, the defense is pushing them off the field and the offense never loses rhythm. They're like click, click, touchdown, ball back, touchdown. It's a blast to watch. We haven't seen that much for Kansas State.
Right. Well, the thing about that is because it forces our offense to have to be perfect in everything that we do. And we know that nobody's going to be perfect, but it forces you to have to be perfect when you're constantly just being passive and teams are going up and down the field. And then we have to hope that they make a mistake versus forcing them to make a mistake. I just don't think you can play college football that way anymore.
I would agree totally. Now let's take a look at how Kansas State's offense matches up with the KU defense. The KU defense had its moments this season, played some pretty good teams nose to nose, got into some shootouts, but then seemed to improve as the season wore on and played a big role in KU getting off to that 5-0 start. But not now, brother. They're in big trouble. Yeah. They're giving up rush yardage like crazy. They're just getting gashed right now. And look, I have sympathy for anyone who has problems with Bijan Robinson because we saw it from K-State, but they gave up more than 400 yards against Texas. It was epic how bad it was. And they also give up a lot of pass plays now. Everything's broken on the defensive side. So if you're Colin Klein, you have passing Will Howard back there and running Deuce Vaughn. Do you want to just hand it off to Deuce and try to kind of demoralize this KU defense, or do you go after them through the air and try to get some big plays to demoralize them that way?
Obviously, I mean, if you go over the top, I mean, it is what it is. I think gutting a defense by just running it down their throat is more demoralizing than when teams throw it over your head. I don't think it's less effective. Don't get me wrong. I'll throw it over your head all day long. But if you're really trying to demoralize a defense and just, punch them in the gut when they're not expecting it, you just run it right down their throat. Or I shouldn't say when they're not expecting it, is when they are expecting you to run it, and you just run it right down their throat. And I believe that's the approach that we take is, we just line up and we run it. And, when we want to throw it, we'll throw it. But we're going to run this football, and we are going to make you pay. And I believe, and again, it's another way to keep their offense off the field and keep our defense fresh, is just run the football. I think that's the approach that we take. Now, again, I don't want to say that we're not going to throw the football, because you can't go into a football game thinking that or whatever. I just believe this is a week that Deuce can really, really get loose. I believe that.
I would agree with that. 2 years ago when these teams met at Bill Snyder Family Stadium, was the pandemic season. There weren't fans in the stands. Two freshman quarterbacks were playing in Will Howard and Jalen Daniels. Neither one of them are what they are now. but they both showed glimpses of that. But really what we all remember about that game was Phillip Brooks having 2 touchdown on punt returns, which it's almost impossible to do, but not on that day. The Les Miles special teams were complete trash. Special teams continue to be somewhat of an issue for Kansas, but nothing like that. What kind of role do you see special teams playing in this game? Because honestly, special teams this season for Kansas State, now that Ty Zentner has taken over the field goal duties, have been solid, but nothing game-changing as of late. They have kind of gotten away from the big returns. I kind of suspect we might see one in this game.
Yeah, I do too. It's been a while. You know, we're overdue for a return. Now, we've gotten good returns. We just haven't had returns for touchdowns, you know, and there is something to be said for that. I mean, last week, our field position, Jiminy Christmas. It seemed like we were starting at the 40-yard line, every time we got the football back. So, having good returns obviously is a key. But I just think that we're going to be able to break a punt return loose. I just believe it. And it might even be a game changer, something early that happens, or a punt block. I just believe special teams is going to take a big part in this football game for the Kansas State side and just be something that kind of catapults us to a big victory.
Brian, I appreciate it very much. We will reconvene sometime over the weekend to talk about this game with the post-game review podcast. And then if K-State takes care of business, we got to do this again. I'm sorry. We got one more week. Add it on.
Absolutely.
You get the bonus game, but I don't think either one of us will mind talking about Kansas State and TCU in the Big 12 title game.
No, not at all. I look forward to it.
Thank you, Mr. Brian Hanley. Fantastic stuff as always. I look forward to talking to you after the game. And now we're going to do something completely different. We haven't done this all year. We're going to mash up a bunch of player interviews into one little topic here as we help you get ready for the Cats and Jayhawks on Saturday. And let's get started off with Deuce Vaughn. And the topics here just range from the importance of this game, the importance of the rivalry, and of course, how good KU might be this season. Let's get it going with the man they call Deuce that cannot be tackled.
How excited are you for the challenge of playing KU?
Very excited, just for the fact that it's another opportunity to play here at Bill Snyder Family Stadium again and a big-time game, big-time rivalry game against a really good Kansas team. And it's going to be challenging, and it's going to be one that we're looking forward to just because of the impact and everything that kind of goes into this game with the Kansas kids that have been here and what's riding on it as far as this community and everybody in it.
Next up, his quarterback, Will Howard. These two started together as true freshmen during the pandemic season and went through their struggles. And now they're in the backfield again with a very good Kansas State football team. Let's hear from the quarterback himself on how Kansas has improved since he's arrived in Manhattan, Kansas, and what kind of threat they pose to the Cats.
The last couple of years, it hasn't been as much of a competitive game as it will be this year because, give credit to them. Coach Leipold has built a culture there, you can tell, and they've bought in, and, they're much improved from what they have been. And, I'm excited because it's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be an electric atmosphere. And I know K-State Nation's going to come out in full support, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be electric.
Here is senior Julius Brents, one of the guys that will be walking through senior day, on his thoughts about this game.
Obviously, it's KU, rivalry game. We got a lot of guys on our team that are from the Lawrence area. And, they definitely got a chip on their shoulder for this game and throughout the whole season. But this game, it definitely does mean a little bit more, I would say, just being a rivalry. And, if we're going to get our best shot from them, we're going to get them our best shot.
Next up is a guy who is a senior for the second time, but he's not walking on senior day because he said last year was great. That's all he needed. He doesn't need to do it again. It is Cade Warner, the senior receiver that started his career at Nebraska and has flourished here at Kansas State.
I'm super excited. This is a senior day, extra motivation. There's the last home game, obviously, with senior day. It's extra motivation. And there's KU rivalry week. There's so many things that can help you get motivated if you're not already motivated. But I know the guys in this team. I know the guys in the locker room. And we're going to treat every single day like it's our last and work as hard as we can.
And finally, let's wrap up this interview segment with the linebacker from Lewisburg, Mr. Austin Moore. Here's the Kansas kid, really kind of odd, the only Kansas kid we got on Tuesday for our press conference, talking about this rivalry and what he thinks of when he thinks of the Sunflower Showdown. And then we'll follow that up with some other questions to Austin. And after that, Ryan Gilbert joins us for his weekly betting segment. Here's Austin Moore.
It means a ton. Obviously, a huge rivalry. A lot of passion that goes into it. That's the word that I think of when I think of this rivalry, is just passion between both fan bases, and super excited for this one.
Well, let's be honest here. They haven't been good in recent years. This is a good football team. Does that catch your attention even more?
Yeah, it definitely does. Obviously year in and year out, we're going to get their best shot. We know that. And this year, their best shot is really good. So definitely catches my attention.
What does Jalen Daniels do that concerns you?
I think he's super elusive. He's great on his feet, obviously running the ball. And he's got a really strong arm, too. So he's just deadly in both facets of the game.
And now we bring in Ryan Gilbert to talk about the betting lines around the Big 12, a very interesting slate of games as we close out the regular season. Oh, man, I don't know what to think about these numbers. Some big lines in the Big 12 this weekend. But first of all, most importantly, Ryan Gilbert, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
How was your Pittsburgh experience? Did you enjoy watching your Steelers play in person, even though they lost?
It was fun. Yeah. Too bad they lost, but Pittsburgh was fun. My first time out there, and yeah, I had a fun time.
You lost approximately $2.3 million on that game.
2.4.
Oh,
be exact.
I'm sorry.
But the government don't need to know about that.
Okay. Well, your losses are fine. Let's start with an interesting game. It's a Friday game. Texas is playing host to Baylor. The Longhorns are an 8.5-point favorite. And if Texas loses, K-State will go to the Big 12 championship. They will have won all their tiebreakers, even if they would lose to KU. Knock on wood. I feel like Texas is going to cover this. I don't know what to do with Texas because they have such a ceiling that I think exceeds everyone else in the Big 12, but then they can't have any consistency to go with it. They look so good against Kansas. What do you feel about this game?
Baylor, the same thing could be said about Baylor, too, with consistency or lack thereof. That's been a team that's looked really good at times and then, laid a goose egg really on offense against Kansas State. So you look at Texas, and obviously you mentioned it, they have to win to have a chance to play in the Big 12 title. So conventional wisdom would probably tell you to take Texas, but is it that easy? Baylor, I'm sure as heck, they would want to be the spoilers and ruin any potential, postseason chance for Texas. I agree. Texas is probably the better team. If, coming into the year, you said Baylor was going to be underdogs by more than a touchdown to Texas in the last game of the year, I think everybody would take Baylor, but they haven't performed well this season. Obviously, they only have 6 wins, so they're, playing for either a crappy bowl game or a less crappy bowl game. So
are those actual bowl games on ESPN this year?
The
crappy
toilet bowl's coming
crappy?
out, I think.
Okay, good.
Now that KU's going bowling.
Oh, I see what you did. Yeah,
but
okay.
Overall, Texas is probably the better team, and to cover 8.5 points isn't too daunting. But I don't love it.
I don't either.
I don't love it.
9 or more at home, I'll go Texas, but not feel great. Oklahoma State is an 8.5-point favorite over West Virginia. West Virginia has to leave home. They stink on the road. I know Oklahoma State's had issues, but I don't think West Virginia on the road's worth a damn.
No. And this is Neil Brown's last game as a Mountaineer, right? So this is it. They're not going bowling. This will be it for his time in Morgantown. So they have nothing to lose. Again, this is kind of like Baylor, Texas. Like, is West Virginia just going to go through the motions because this game means nothing? Or,
they can't get to a bowl. Yep.
I'm a senior. This is it. I'm going to go and play my hardest and see what happens. So, again, I like Oklahoma State. Of course, they're the better team. But, again, is 8.5 points too much?
That's a lot.
It's up to you to decide. I don't love this one either side. Once you get later in the season, some of these games, it just doesn't – you don't know who's going to show up and who's not going to show up.
Okay, a very intriguing line here for me. TCU at home is a 10-point favorite over Iowa State. Now, keep in mind, we'll get to this, of course, with our last pick. K-State is a 12-point favorite at home against Kansas, and I think Kansas is better than Iowa State. So I'm intrigued by this, but I think what Vegas is telling us is TCU's not going to score at will. Iowa State's defense is going to suppress the overall score in this game. I like TCU to win this, but boy, if there's ever a time to bet on Iowa State, I don't think Iowa State wins this, but they might put a scare into the Frogs.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And you look at TCU on the season, they've only had one win by more than 10 points, which was all the way back in the first conference game against Oklahoma. So they've only had double-digit games up more than 10 points in Big 12 conference play one time. And Iowa State, the way they play, That's going to be a low-scoring game, I would assume. I don't care what, TCU's the better team. I don't think you can control the tempo that much against Iowa State. I mean, look at last week against Texas Tech, right? That was a snooze fest, so to speak. So, like you mentioned, can they keep it close? Absolutely. I don't think they're going to pull off the upset and spoil TCU's season. But you got to remember, even if TCU does lose this game, their playoff hopes are obviously gone, but their spot is guaranteed in the Big 12 title game. And I know coaches, players, media always talk about, hey, focus on the one game that's ahead of you. But quite literally, TCU has 2 games on their schedule, whereas 9 teams out of 10 in college football only have 1 right now.
Oklahoma and Tech with the lone kind of competitive spread. This game is in Lubbock. Oklahoma's a 2-point favorite on the road. Oklahoma's playing better football, somewhat, by what they've been playing earlier. Tech's good at home. I kind of like the Red Raiders here, but I haven't decided. Your thoughts?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Can I stay away?
Yeah. This game's...
That's my analysis.
That's good. Just stay away from this one.
Premium expert insight right there.
Yeah, just...
I don't like either side.
Stinky game. Stay away. Okay. I like...
Is that good enough?
That's good. That's fine. That'll work for me. And finally, the Sunflower Showdown. Oh, God, I hate saying that. The battle for John Brown's rifle. K-State, a 12-point favorite over Kansas. Do the Wildcats win this game by 13 or more on their home field to secure that place in the Big 12 championship against TCU? I don't know.
It's always fun to kind of come up with a line yourself before it comes out. And I thought this one would be like 6 or 7 points in favor of Kansas State. I mean, it was at 13.5 or 13 to open. It's gone down a little bit. So that tells you where the public feels about this game. And I agree. I mean, K-State, do they win? Yes, absolutely, in my opinion. But a couple touchdowns, that's a lot. I understand why, because the over-under is so high. I mean, both defenses. Let's not forget that K-State's defense is really beat up right now in the secondary. Obviously, Kansas's defense, I don't think that's much of a threat. So I love the over here, but I think that kind of explains why the line is at double digits, is because there's going to be a lot of points scored. Kansas State to win, absolutely, but to win by more than touchdown and a field goal, I don't see that happening. I mean, this is not the Kansas team of the last 10, 15 years. It's just not.
They're kind of were last week. That's what I think did this spread. That created this spread was that Jalen Daniels wasn't very good. The defense was atrocious. They gave up more than 400 yards rushing. I think Vegas is looking at this as a day Deuce Vaughn's going to go to town. And if Jalen Daniels isn't any better, this will be a 4-touchdown game. This won't be competitive, but I have a feeling Jalen Daniels is going to be okay. I think he's got the one game out of the way. He didn't get injured. He played cautiously. I think he's going to go for it.
You look at the numbers, the stats, the metrics on what teams have done throughout a season. That dictates a lot of the line, right? As well as, where the money has gone, where the bets have gone. But one thing you can't, put on any sort of statistic is just the fact that this is a rivalry, right? I mean, KU is going to give K-State its best shot because they have a legitimate chance to win. They really do. I mean, I would not be shocked if KU pulled off the upset. Would you?
No, this is the one time I think there's
a quality team,
a legitimate chance of KU to win and it's not because any of the players on the field. Lance Leipold knows how to coach and can prepare his team, and he might just have something sneaky good to work against K-State.
I agree. So K-State can win this game, but I do not like the spread at all.
And, of course, I'll have my actual pick. I'll do a prediction on my daily delivery on Friday as I run through all the Big 12, and then I'll actually have my score behind the paywall for our VIP subscribers and my 5 keys to victory. Ryan Gilbert, I will see you at the Bill like everyone else. I will be there. You are going to show up, right? I'm just assuming you're going to show up for the game.
Yeah, I guess. I was really wanting to stay home and listen to Brando on TV. Is that okay?
It's some quality broadcasting there.
I just love him so much.
We might need you to work the sideline for Brando, so they don't have to work with telepathy and try to figure out what the injuries are because he just thinks it's that way. Thank you, Ryan Gilbert. Appreciate it. I hope I can follow your advice because last week was a colossal struggle for me on the betting front. Don't tell my wife. Everyone, this is a huge game, and I hope you can make it to Bill Snyder Family Stadium. I know a lot of students won't be around on campus, but hopefully they come back to town post-holiday so they can see this game for themselves. This is the biggest K-State KU game in many years, maybe going back to 1995 when KU roared into town full of themselves and a top 10 program and got their butts whooped. Can Kansas State continue the dominance over Kansas? Lance Leipold has done wonders with this program in just 2 seasons, and now KU's as big a threat as they've been in a very long time. Certainly since Mark Mangino left Lawrence. But I think K-State can and will handle this game against the Jayhawks, and here's the one key for you to focus upon during the course of the game. And honestly, it deals more with a KU key as much as being a K-State key. How effective will Kansas quarterback Jalen Daniels be in this game? He was so good earlier in the year. He was a blast to watch, honestly. And then he came back from his shoulder injury last week against Texas and looked like a shell of himself. He seemed to be afraid of contact, afraid of running the ball, afraid of doing too much that might expose his shoulder to another injury. He cannot play that way. But it's up to the Kansas State defense to make it very clear that he will be contained as a runner and as a thrower. You've got to pressure Jalen Daniels while keeping him bottled up. Not an easy proposition for any defense, but it's been something Kansas State's been fairly effective at all season long. And a big reason why is not just the rush-ins coming off the corners, but middle linebacker Daniel Green is an ongoing presence in the heart of the K-State defense, often asked to shadow quarterbacks just like Jalen Daniels. And remember, last year, Daniel Green was so violent in his contact that he injured, with perfectly clean hits, the first 2 quarterbacks on the Kansas roster, forcing Jalen Daniels to come into the game. That actually turned out to be a good thing for Kansas because last year they found out that Daniels is the man, and now he has played some extremely effective football, whether he's running the option or throwing the ball downfield with his strong but sometimes inaccurate arm. Jalen Daniels is a really good quarterback. They got to keep him bottled up. At the end of the day, I think Kansas State wins this game and does cover the 12 points against the Jayhawks. But I tell you what, it won't be easy. This is not a walkover. K-State better come out as motivated and focused as the Wildcats typically are in this series. Having a bunch of Kansas kids on the roster, as Ryan Wallace said earlier in the show, is a big deal. This game means a lot to them, and Kansas State has more than double the number of players from Kansas that KU does. And guys like Echo Boydo, who are from Lawrence, this game means a lot to them. We'll see if K-State comes out with their typical motivation, and the whole nation will be watching as this game, as mentioned earlier, is on Fox National, kicking at 7. And I am very excited to see what is in store in this game, because if K-State wins, K-State goes to the Big 12 championship game next Saturday in Arlington, Texas. And TCU, win or lose this weekend against Iowa State, will be that opponent. And if Kansas State advances to the Big 12 championship, the Sugar Bowl is basically on the menu for this holiday season. That game is December 31st in New Orleans, of course, against the best available team from the SEC. I'm Tim Fitzgerald. We appreciate you listening so much. Remember, we are having a 75% off Black Friday sale right now at Go Power Cat. If you've enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoy our coverage, please support us as we can continue all of the great stuff we're able to provide K-Staters because of our subscribers. And also, we are sponsored by Robbins Motor Company, and we so appreciate them. Everyone there is such good people. I love getting our cars from there. K-State fans, visit the Robbins Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat location on Anderson Avenue in Manhattan for an exciting test drive. Robbins Motor Company, title sponsor of the Power Cat pregame podcast. It is the Cats and Jayhawks, 7 p.m., Bill Snyder Family Stadium right here in Manhattan, Kansas. You know where I'll be on Saturday night. I will see you at the Bill.
Thank you for listening to the Power Cat Podcast. Make sure you're subscribing to our show at Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Power Cat Podcast. All rights reserved. GoPowerCat.com.
Get in on the action with the world's largest sports book right at your fingertips. Circa Sports Iowa is where the pros play. Enjoy the highest limits, lowest takeouts, competitive betting menus, and the best customer service. Now you can download, fund, and bet like a pro from anywhere in Iowa. Circa Sports Iowa. Sports betting the way it should be. Download your new bookie today. Visit circasports.com for details.